Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. So, if you've ever looked at your bank account and felt like your hard-earned cash is just slowly losing its superpower, yeah, you're definitely not alone. Today, we're diving into a really incredible story about shaking off that financial stagnation. We're talking about bridging the gap between where your money is sitting right now and where you actually want it to be. Specifically, we're going to see how everyday earners are totally beating inflation using the Pag-IBIG fund. Let's get right into it, shall we?
Okay, let's kick things off by meeting Marco. Marco said something that I think hits home for a lot of us. He said, every payday, it feels like sprinting just to stay in the same place. Man, if that isn't relatable, right? He's your classic overburdened breadwinner, working crazy hours, carrying the whole weight of his family's financial security on his shoulders. And that inner monologue, it perfectly captures this really common, just absolute exhaustion. I mean, he's doing everything right by the traditional playbook, working hard, providing, but he feels like he's going literally nowhere. It's just his endless treadmill of financial anxiety.
Well, the math behind all that exhaustion basically boils down to this one. Shockingly tiny number, 0.125%. That is the actual bank interest rate he's been staring at for 3 years. 3 years. To put that into perspective, at 0.125%, your money is practically turning into dust. Honestly, you'd probably find more value checking the couch cushions for spare change. When you park your savings in a traditional low-yield account, you aren't actually keeping it safe. Actually, scratch that. You are keeping it safe, but you're locking it into a state of total stagnation. This fraction of a percent is exactly why Marco feels like he's sprinting just to stand still. His money isn't working. It's just sitting there on vacation.
And this brings up a huge mental trap that catches so many of us who are just trying to be responsible adults. On one hand, Marco is dealing with these deep, completely understandable anxieties. He's thinking, what if the market crashes? What if this whole thing is a scam? Because he provides for his family, he genuinely believes that taking any action with his money is a risk he just cannot afford. Doing nothing feels safe. But his childhood friend Leah hits him with a harsh but totally necessary reality check. She tells him, fear keeps it safe from risk, but inflation steals it anyway. Wow, it's a game changer of a realization. Inflation is essentially this silent tax, quietly eating away at his family's purchasing power day after day, all while he thinks he's playing it safe.
So Leah gets it. She understands Marco's hesitation, so she gives him this brilliant, calming metaphor. She says, you don't need to jump into the deep ocean, just step onto the boat. Think about that deep ocean for a second. It represents the wildly volatile stuff, day trading, speculative crypto, the stuff that gives you an ulcer and requires an iron stomach. Leah's showing us that escaping that stagnant 0.125% trap, it doesn't mean you have to swim with the sharks. You don't need risky, complicated maneuvers. You just need a sturdy, reliable boat to get moving.
So what exactly is this boat she's talking about? Well, in this case, it's accessible, government-backed savings programs. Looking right at the official Pag-IBIG fund directory, we've got two main avenues, regular savings and MP2 savings. Now, these aren't flashy. They aren't some speculative venture promising to make you a millionaire overnight, but they are incredibly established, trusted pillars of financial security in the Philippines. They're built specifically to be low-friction, highly secure ways for everyday folks to steadily grow their wealth over time, completely stress-free. Let's zoom in on the MP2 savings program, because that's the exact solution Leah hands to Marco. What makes MP2 such a knockout isn't just its historically higher dividend rates, though those are great, it's the whole user experience. It's clean. It's steady. It's totally low friction. You won't find any intimidating financial jargon to decode here. You aren't going to be staring at stressful red and green candlesticks flashing all over your screen. MP2 offers this incredibly clear path for just taking small monthly steps. It's literally designed from the ground up to strip away all that overwhelming complexity that scares us away from investing in the first place.
But listen, even with this perfectly clear, safe path laid right out in front of him, there's a hurdle. Marco admits the hardest part isn't learning how the market works. It's trusting myself enough to make the first click. And he hit the nail on the head, right? This is what we call the execution gap. We can read all the articles, we can totally understand that inflation is eating our cash, and we logically know MP2 is a safe harbor. But converting that knowledge into actual action? That is a massive psychological hurdle. It's almost never a technical problem. It's a human one. Starting is absolutely the hardest part.
Right, so how do we actually bridge that execution gap? Marco does it by breaking this huge mountain of anxiety into two almost ridiculously simple steps. Step 1, open the government-backed savings page on your phone or tablet. Step 2, set up an automated transfer of just 1,000 pesos for every payday. That is it. Notice he didn't dump his life savings in there. He didn't lock away the money he needs for next week's groceries or the kids' tuition. He set a really small, totally manageable boundary. And automation? Automation is the absolute secret weapon here. It completely removes the need for daily willpower and turns a super scary one-time decision into this effortless, permanent financial habit.
And the moment that automated investment goes active, everything changes. In Marco's story, this is exactly when the heavy ambient noise of his financial stress just sort of fades into a quiet hum. He takes a deep breath and finally lets go of that knot of anxiety he's been carrying around for years. A real, genuine smile replaces the worry. By just setting up that simple automation, he officially stepped off the treadmill and onto the boat. The absolute relief of knowing your money is finally working for you, even in a small way, it's just incredibly powerful.
Looking back on this huge shift, Marco has this profound realization. He says, we spend years worrying about the gap between where we are and where we want to be, forgetting that the bridge is built one small step at a time. And it's so true. You simply do not close a massive financial gap overnight. You transform that anxiety into quiet gratitude, not by winning the lottery, not by finding some lucky stock pick, but by taking those small, consistent, automated actions that just compound beautifully over time.
And then Leah hits us with this final, incredibly vital takeaway. You didn't need a fortune to start. You just needed to stop waiting for the perfect time. How often do we tell ourselves that? We say, oh, I'll start investing when I get that promotion, or when I pay off this one last bill, or when the economy settles down. But as Leah so wisely points out, waiting for a massive windfall or the perfect moment is just a total illusion. Acting right now, even with just a tiny amount, will always be waiting on the sidelines while inflation does its silent, dirty work.
Well, that brings us to the end of this explainer. Bridge the gap. Start small today. I want you to ask yourself honestly right now, what is the one small 1,000 peso step that you're avoiding today? Is it setting up your own Pag-IBIG MP2 account? Is it finally just clicking automate on your savings so you never have to think about it again? Whatever it is, remember that the execution gap is literally just a psychological hurdle. You have the knowledge now, so it's time to make that first click. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.